Right now, our partner Shimano is the only brand that has an electronic mountain bike transmission available to buy. And by trickling down that technology from the top level XTR to XT, it makes it more affordable and a better prospect for many riders. But how does it compare to the good old mechanical gears? Let's compare the two to see which comes out on top. So Shimano Di2 is a fully electronic gear changing system. So up on my bar, rather than the shifter that pushes the cable, I've got these set of buttons, should we call them. They run a wire to the display unit. A wire goes from there into my frame to a battery that's actually sat in my seat post, and then to the front and the rear mech that both have these little servo motors that do the work of changing the gears. Now this first became available in 2015 in the highest level componentry XTR. It's now also available in XT, which is slightly more affordable. So before we start digging into the features of each system, let's talk about the top line pros and cons. And let's start with installation. That's where I think conventional gears win. With Di2, you've got to find somewhere to fit junction boxes and batteries inside your frame. Maintenance, I think Di2 wins that one actually, because once you've got that stuff in there, you don't have to think about replacing gear cables, it just works every time. Weight is negligible between the two systems, but pricing is a big one. Di2 is more expensive. So let's start this with the Di2 and let's talk about performance slightly to begin with. So you get perfect shifting every time with the Di2. On the mechanical version, eventually with wear and tear and weather conditions, you're going to start to get friction in that cable. So water will get into the outer cables. Eventually that's going to slow down the shifts, but also make that shifter feel like it's got more friction in it, so it's harder to change gear. With the Di2, it's consistent changing every time. Now with the mechanical gears, you do have to keep replacing that gear cable to keep it feeling fresh and keep them performing well. I would say the inner cable 4 or 5 times a year, the outer once or twice. So it's a little bit of time, it's a little bit of money each time you want to do that, but you've got to do it if you want to keep that performing as well as possible. Of course, the counter argument here with the electronic shifting is that you have to remember to charge the system, and not very often. The battery should last about 6 months, but of course that does depend on how much you ride the bike. But even people with the worst memories like myself should be able to remember to charge the system just twice a year. So to the performance of each system, well with the Di2 you get really efficient quick shifting. More about the speed of the shifting in a second, because you can actually adjust that if you prefer. Also a really nice feature is you can just hold your thumb on the lever. So if you want to go really far up or down the cassette, hold your thumb there and the mech will fire away. You can limit the amount of shifts if you prefer using the Shimano YouTube app. You want very fast shifts on your mechanical setup? Well, you're all going to need a very fast thumb. Now on mechanical gears, you can go up or down 2 or 3 gears in one longer push, but to go up or down the whole cassette, you're going to take numerous pushes to get there. Of course, you're not going to do that very often. It might be a case of when you're stopping and starting and then need to change gear, but in those situations, it can take a little bit longer with mechanical gears. Synchro shift. Now for people who like to run 2 or 3 chainrings on their bike, this gives them the option to dump that left shifter if they so prefer. And I do, to be honest. It gets rid of the shifter off the bar, but also gets rid of that cable and that mess. Makes your cockpit look super clean. Now this means that you can shift all your gears just using your right thumb, front and rear mechs, and you can set that again using the eTube app. So you can set exactly where it shifts between the front and rear, and also the different types of gearing map you want. So that synchro shift option, just using the one shifter for 2 chain rings, and your rear mech, has been used by a few of the top enduro pros like Nico Lau, Greg Callahan and Tracy Mosley. So that gives them the option of having that really nice small chain ring for winching themselves to the top of the hills, then sticking it up into the big chain ring for the stages. However, one disadvantage of that could be that if you miss shift, the chain's going to drop down onto that smaller chain ring, and that does give you a lot of slack and the chain could come off. However, you can stop that by actually getting it up into the big chain ring and then playing with your settings on the display, setting it into manual, so then the gear shifter will only move the rear mech, so there's no danger of that front mech moving. Now, if you want to run 2 or 3 chain rings on a mechanical setup, you're going to have to run a left shifter. That's not a huge problem. Of course, you can get that a little bit more mess with the cables, a little bit more weight. But for me, the biggest reason I don't like that is I like my dropper lever to be under there on the left-hand side. So I'm gonna have to put that somewhere else if I'm running a left-hand shifter. Now, sometimes it's the smaller details that add up to a nicer user experience, and I put this one in that category. So the front mech auto trims. That means that when you're shifting on the rear, so your chain line is moving up and down, sometimes on the mechanical version, your chain will eventually start rubbing on that front mech cage, make a little bit of noise. Now on the Di2 version, your front mech will auto trim, meaning that it moves minutely when you shift on the rear to make sure that chain never rubs, never get any noise. Small detail, but a very nice one. Auto trim on a mechanical front mech? No way, it's more like manual trim. You're gonna have to give that lever a little push. What a chore. So to the pricing, which is a consideration for most of us, of course, but not all of us. Some people have deep pockets, and it's available currently in XTR, which stands for XT Race, and the slightly lower groupset XT. So the XT group set costs about £1,600 for the Di2 version, whereas the mechanical version costs about £700. So it's double plus a bit for the Di2 version. The premium XTR version comes in at £1,939 for Di2, whereas the mechanical comes in at £976. But if you're wanting to upgrade to Di2 gears, there is a cheaper and easier way of doing it. If you've got the chain set and the cassette and chain already, then you can buy a gear set. So that just comprises of the mech, the battery, everything you need to go to Di2 gears. Another benefit of the Di2 system is it's customizable using Shimano's eTube app. All sorts of things can be set, like I've talked about a little bit already. You can actually choose what gear ratio you want that front mech to change. You can also choose how fast you want the gears to shift. So you've got 5 different settings. Personally, I like it on very fast. However, you can miss shift if you hold that lever a little bit too long. So in that case, you might want to slow it down a little bit. You can also choose exactly what the lever does. So which button goes up or which goes down. Do you want the display to stay on for a certain amount of time? Do you want it to beep? All sorts of things can be set up using the eTube app. So the display on the bars gives you all the information you need to know, from the gear you're in, the battery level, and the shift mode you're in. It also has ANT connectivity, so it can send that information to a bike computer if you wish. Of course, on mechanical gears, all you really need to know is what gear you're in. So some shifters will have a window that'll tell you that. Alternatively, you can take a look down at your cassette, but do you really need to know? I guess occasionally it's nice to know if you've got a gear left, but other than that, you don't really need to know. So to the weights, you're actually adding a couple of components. You've got the display unit and you've got a battery, which is a very light battery, I've got to say. You've also got a little bit more weight on the mechs, just down to these motors. However, the shifters are much lighter because all they are really is electronic buttons. Mechanical shifters have all sorts of complicated parts, springs in there. It's actually a lot lighter again if you're running a 2x system and you decide to run synchro shift, so you've only got one shifter up on the bars. All in all, it's about 80 or 90 grams heavier to run Di2. That does depend on length of cables and things that are coming off there. So it's a pretty minimal weight increase. So when it comes to actually indexing the gears, that's where I think the mechanical versions are slightly more user-friendly. Using the adjuster, you can make differences to the cable tension and therefore actually adjust where the mechs are in that system to line them up with the sprockets. On the Di2 version, actually you need to hold onto this button on the bottom of the display, which brings up the settings page, and then you use your shifter up or down to therefore move the mechs minutely, again, to line them up perfectly with the sprockets. So slightly more difficult than doing it with a cable, but you'll soon learn how to do that. Any other disadvantages from Di2? Well, you've got to find somewhere to put your battery, although there are some nice integrated options. You could put it in the head tube using a special top cap, or in this case, I've got it in my Protharsis seat post, which is designed for doing that. So it's a fixed seat post and the battery just goes in the bottom of that. You can stick them on the side of your bottle cages, but externally, it's going to not look as nice as it being hidden away somewhere. Of course, like all the premium cycling products, it's going to be expensive. I've got the premium XTR version on this bike, which is very nice, but you can get it as well in XT, so the price point is coming down. So there's your weights and prices. It'll be interesting to see where Di2 goes next. Does it go to Saint, the downhill group set, or does it trickle down even further to SLX? Let us know what you think in the comments down below. So what wins out of mechanical and electronic gears? Well, there's many pros and cons to each, as I've discussed, but electronic is more expensive. Just like many of those luxuries like carbon wheels on a mountain bike, they are more expensive. Are they going to make you faster? Possibly not. Are you going to enjoy your ride a little bit more? Well, only you can decide that. If you've got any more questions about Di2, just leave them down below this video, because I'll be doing a follow-up on GMBN Tech by trying to answer all the frequently asked questions. So yeah, leave them down below. If you want to see some more videos, click over there for another Di2 video, and click over there for how to change your gear cable on a mechanical setup. Give us a thumbs up if you like this video, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done already.